Welcome to the Black Belt Business Podcast. My name is Matthew Brenner, and today I'm with Chris. And Chris, I don't want to mispronounce your last name, so you got to say it for me. I
It's
should have
Natzke.
practiced for Chris Natzke. Okay, I was going to say it that way, but I didn't know how that was going to come off. He's a Taekwondo champion, a public speaker, and he's done a lot for the martial arts industry in terms of coaching people. Been around for a really long time. So, Chris, thanks for coming on today.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
So before we started recording, one of the things you spoke about was being, I think, a vice president for the Bill Superfoot Wallace organization. Tell me about that.
Yeah.
What do you guys do as an
Yeah,
organization?
absolutely. Well, thanks for asking and thanks for having me here. Well, so I've been a student of Bill Wallace's since 1986.
Cool.
And so what we have in the Superfoot organization, my role is the director of business development as well as black belt testing. So
Hmm.
we have affiliate schools around the world. We currently have about 40 schools in the U.S., Canada. We also have one in Germany. And so what we do is we provide the Superfoot curriculum that all schools can use. We also do some moderate business training and leadership training because that's kind of my ballywick, if you will. And we also have an instructor certification program. And then I coordinate all of the black belt testings around the world as well. So we'll have anywhere from 4 to 8 black belt testings every year, where we have a integrative system where people can train. Current black belts already can train for 4 months. That we do that virtually in advance, and then they come to an on-site location and test directly with Bill Wallace for their black belt.
Very cool. So when you're testing them for black belt, they train virtually for 4 months once they're already a black belt. So
Correct.
is this for like another degree? Like what are they
We
actually
actually,
earning?
everyone comes in as first degree black belt in the Superfoot system, but the way we've designed the curriculum is so it can be an overlay on top of what you're currently doing. So my background's Taekwondo. If you're Shotokan, Kyokushin, whatever, you can literally take the Superfoot curriculum, lay it over your current curriculum. A lot of schools are looking for enhancements or even a design of a sparring curriculum. So that's basically how we created our curriculum with that in mind. So it's using the techniques that Bill Wallace has used to become a 3-time national point champion and then a undefeated world champion. So we have our basic techniques, our fundamental techniques. We have combinations, we have fighting strategies, and then a whole slew of drills and skills for people to enhance their classes.
So to the schools that license this from you guys, are they branded like Bill Wallace, or do they have their own brand and they just use
They
the
have their
training
own
program?
brand, but then they can market themselves as an affiliate Superfoot System school. So they can utilize our logo, they can utilize all of our branding for that. And again, I would say that of all our schools, we probably only have 1 or 2 that just teach the Superfoot System as their only striking curriculum. Most of them are using it as an enhancement.
Hmm. Was this a COVID birth, like the virtual
No,
training, or was
actually,
this
I mean,
before then?
Superfoot system, Bill Wallace has had that going since 2000, but there was a change in leadership probably about 5 years ago when myself and 3 other individuals came on board. And we said, where before it was basically focused on individuals wanting to have access to Bill Wallace. And we said, well, man, I think really, in fact, all 4 of us on the board were either current or past school owners. And we said the way we're going to build this business is not through individual members, it's going to be through developing schools, who then, of course, make the curriculum and black belt testing opportunities available to their students. And that's how we grow. So we probably, since we've been doing our new testing format, we came out of it after COVID in June of 2001. We're zeroing in about having 200 people already receive their black belts with Superfoot. I've got one coming up here in October of this year in Denver, where I've got 26 candidates, most of those my students, that'll be testing for either their first degree or advanced degrees because they've tested with them in the past.
Very cool. Yeah, we did like COVID time, we had a virtual program, kind of like everyone else, we're kind of forced into it. I would say that we put a lot more effort and resources into it than most people, most martial arts school owners. Like I had a mastermind I signed up for about 6 months before COVID happened, which was for online marketing and sales for fitness and nutrition.
Okay.
Okay. And then when COVID happened, and I was still like new at that business, because my idea was okay, I'll sell, like, we're already good at selling the martial arts. Okay, but there's some parents that are just not going to take martial arts. Like,
Right.
of course, we can try to recruit them, but like, I can sell them fitness and nutrition, right? Like, advice. Um, so it's like, okay, I want to get good at that, but COVID happened, and I was still new at it. So it wasn't like I had a thriving business yet, like a thriving, fitness and nutrition business. So, and the schools were falling apart. So I was like, okay, let's just transfer these skills to martial arts. And that was online coaching for fitness and nutrition. So
Very
I
good.
kind of so I kind of transferred it over, and we ended up having, I mean, I don't know anyone that's had a larger online martial arts school that was like with live classes, live with an instructor. So I hired an instructor out in Florida. He
Yeah.
became a full-time employee. Like, he
Yeah.
only taught 5 classes a night.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. 4 classes a night.
Okay.
Um, and so he taught live classes from. He had a school already, but like his school like was a COVID death, and he was very like worried about
Yeah. Yeah.
getting back involved in person. So for him to be able to teach, he set up a little dojo in his house, like, and
Sure.
he's super good guy, like,
Yeah.
and super focused on it, and like amazing. And I would sell the program. I would do a million intro lessons on Zoom, and they would enroll, and they would and how I set it up, it was like 6 months for $1,800, and you can
Okay.
train as much as you want. So it wasn't a cheap program whatsoever. It
Hmm.
wasn't like it was $20 a month or something. So we ended up bringing in maybe like 200K something
Wow.
just from that. Yeah, just from online, nothing in person. And these are people in California and Texas and like all over the country, nowhere near us. So the time zones is hard. Sometimes I'd be teaching, it'd be 11:30 at night, and they wouldn't know because like,
Right.
how would they
I'm
know?
curious, were most of those people new to martial arts, or were they current students?
Brand new.
Okay.
Brand new.
All right. Good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we had our students that, like, would also do the online program because we
Right.
were shut down, but I don't consider those, like, that the revenue number I gave had nothing to do with those students,
Yeah.
right? These are, like, new
Yeah.
people from
Fantastic.
online. Yeah, so it worked out well. I mean, I was working like a dog, like 60, 70 hours a week,
Right.
but
Get me back into
uh,
school so I can don't have to work as hard. You
yeah.
made me think of something that we did as part of the COVID response as well, from a Superfoot standpoint. Is we also went virtually. In fact, Bill Wallace has something that he's still doing called Superfoot Dojo. So
Mm.
every Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, he has a virtual class he's been teaching, and that was
Oh, very cool.
originally, came as a way of him offsetting the revenue loss that he had because he couldn't go out and do seminars anymore, right?
Mm,
But he's just continued to do it, whatever, 3 years later. And it's been a great entry point for us because a lot of those people that were with him and training consistently ended up being black belt candidate students for us, getting their black belts
mm,
with us. And
mm,
it's been a great tool when we are enrolling schools. They have access to them every week as well, so they can utilize that either privately, or they could, use their video screens at their schools and do a class with him live. So
mm.
we have several students or several schools that do that. So it is interesting how something that we had to do totally out of necessity to just survive as an industry, we were able to parlay that into something even more expansive.
Yeah, and I'm curious about your experience because obviously there's some sort of disconnect doing something online, right? And that's why a lot of people never even did the online thing. They're like, you can't learn online and blah blah blah. But like, you learn everything on the internet, right? Like, why can't you learn martial arts? But there is, like, I get some of it. There's some physicality that you can't
Yeah,
exactly do.
yeah,
And every once in a while, we'd have someone come into one of our studios. Like, we require, if they're going to test for black belt, they have to fly out to
right,
us. Like,
100%.
there's not. So all the other belt tests, we would do it on Zoom. They would have to have a partner with them, and we'd
Okay,
watch them do it like a parent or something,
yeah,
and then we'd mail out the belt, right? Um, and they mailed out equipment too, like they got a target and gloves and all the stuff they needed. But when we had people fly in person, and we actually like saw them in person, wasn't super impressive. All right, if I'm being completely honest, right? And like there were some times like I'd be embarrassed, like, oh my god, like they look better on Zoom, and but like now I see it in person, and honestly, it just like wasn't as good as it could have
Well, my,
been,
my
and
thought
pretty big.
process in that is if I were to, and I have no interest in doing something like that, but if I were
Mm,
designing something like that, I think it would have to be more of a hybrid option where they were training on the majority of the basis doing it virtually, but maybe they were having some sort of a quarterly or biannual way where you're spending some longer periods of time with them, from a live perspective. Maybe they fly in every 3 months or every 6 months, and you get to spend. Now I know working with children, that may not be the easiest thing to do,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
if you have that, because there really isn't. I've been doing martial arts a long time, as have you. There really isn't anything that can replace being in front of someone and being able to see what's going on and seeing their body alignment and all that kind of stuff. So I would think if I were to do something like that, it would have to have some sort of a hybrid component to it.
So I guess for the people that you're training, they're already training in a school anyway. So they are getting that
Right.
physicality.
So these folks are, and it doesn't mean that we don't ever have anyone show up and have the same experience that you've had, like, whoa, that didn't show up the way we wanted it to. But by and large, there are already people that have their black belts. And we're not talking about kids as well. I mean, we've had people as young as 14 test, but they've generally done it with a parent.
Right.
Um, and so we do have those four. We take our curriculum and we divide it into three components: phase 1, 2, and 3. Think beginner, intermediate, advanced. And so they have pre-testing in that. We call them the phase test, and then they also have a pre-test where I take them through as close as they can get virtually to what Bill Wallace is going to take them through. So it's not like they're going to have any super surprises when they get in front of him. I'm going to really have drilled them, not only for the 3 phase testings, but we have a pretty intense pre-test in advance. So I've always felt good when people came to me and said, wow, thanks so much for that pre-test. It really helped me prepare. Because I want people to succeed, right? I don't want someone to be up there in front of them and flame out. Not only for their benefit, I don't want to get yelled at. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, if you're a martial arts school owner and you're listening to this and you don't do a pre-test,
Oh my gosh.
yes. I mean, maybe for like the smaller belts and stripes,
Yeah.
probably don't need that. But like for a black belt test,
Oh,
anyone who shows up, you should know that they're going to pass because they showed you everything they need to do to pass.
so
Right? That
Matthew,
doesn't mean yeah.
oh, you and I are on the same. In fact, we just had a black belt testing here for my organization here in the Denver area. And on August 10th, and we had, I don't know, it was a smaller group. I think we had 13, 14 people test. But a month before that, they did have their pre-test, and we make it very clear to them in their 12-week black belt testing cycle at the very beginning. In fact, I'm actually going to have that meeting for our December group tomorrow morning, is we have full ability to come to you that month before and say, you're not ready. Because that's the last thing that I want to have happen. We generally try to do it closer to 6 weeks out, because I've had the issue before, like, oh my gosh, how can you not let him test? His grandparents just bought their plane tickets. I don't want to have that experience. But yeah, I want to have someone up there succeed, because it doesn't, I'm going to work them hard in the pre-test, right? And I'm going to be very honest with them at what needs to be done. But I really would have someone, I would prefer to have someone succeed, not only for their benefit, but for the benefit of our program. I mean, we look much
Yeah.
better when they look much better.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean that you're automatically going to pass them that day, but you're
Right,
set up for
right,
success,
right.
right? I think
Exactly.
some people are thinking like, oh, then what's the point in having a test? Well, the test is almost like a recital, right? And like if the person practices enough piano, the recital is easy, right? It's not like that's their first time performing it. The only time we've definitely failed people for sure. The one time I specifically comes to mind where it was really bad was like, so we're very specific. Like if you don't show up on time,
Hmm.
it's at like, we're going to close the door. We're going to lock the door. We don't actually lock the door because it's a fire hazard, but we pretend. Uh, and that's it. You show up 30 seconds late, you're done. So be here early. So
Yeah,
most people show up 30 minutes early. They show up an
that's right.
hour early. They'll stretch. They'll do the thing, right? Of course, we had someone show up, 4 minutes late. And we say, like, what if there's an accident? What if there's this? What if there's that? Doesn't matter. Like, you got to be there on time. And
That's
had
right.
someone show up late. We said, sorry, you can't test. This was like a teenager and the mom. And the mom, like, went nuts at me, screaming, yelling. But I knew, like, listen, this is the expectation we set. And part of me was like, forget it. It's fine. No big deal. Like, I don't want to deal with this. Right. But I was like, I can't do that. It's
Can't
not
do
fair
it.
to them.
Yeah, well,
Right.
one of the things that will set like the tone tomorrow when I have the next group for our black belt kickoff event is I'll say it's better to be 10 minutes early than 1 minute late. And I have the
Yeah.
same talk with everyone. The other thing that we have in our program here, not Superfoot, but for our traditional Taekwondo program that I oversee here in the Denver area, is I was in the first class of the ultimate black belt test that Tom Kalos ran back in, I guess, 2004, 2005 is when I did that with them. And so they have a number of requirements that they have to do. We actually have an app that's been designed. So they have to do a certain number of push-ups and a certain number of crunches and a certain number of times they run their forms and sparring rounds, etc. And so they have all their physical requirements. And then they also have several requirements from a personal development standpoint. So they have to do, I think the number is 300 random acts of kindness, 100 home chores if they're kids. They have to mentor someone. They also have to do a day of empathy, either being blind, deaf, mute, or in a wheelchair. So they have all of those.
Wait, stop. Tell me about that. I've never heard
Okay,
anything
so
like that before.
so
That's
one of the
wild.
things that I was going to see if I could seek that value. So I credit Tom with this, right? Because when we did the ultimate black belt test back in '04 and '05, he wanted it to be an experience that wasn't just a test that you took on a weekend or over 2 days or even a week. It was something that we did over, in our case, 13 months. So we had to do 52,000 push-ups, 52,000 crunches, spar 1,000 rounds, blah, blah, blah. But we also had this human development component. So each one of us had to go through like a body for life. And we had to do these acts of kindness. In our case, we were master instructor levels. We did it for 13 months. We had to generate 1,000 random acts of kindness and create 10,000 random acts of kindness within our martial art community. And they had to be logged. I mean, back in the day, they were actually written down and logged. And then we had the component of a day of empathy. So spending a day, 24-hour period, either being blind, deaf, mute, or in a wheelchair. And the idea there is so that you have this degree of empathy and you understand that there are things that people go through that maybe we know about them, but we don't really know about them. And we've had some tremendous experiences that people have come back in terms of being life-changing for them, right? And so that's a key part of our program. So the idea there is that when they come through that 12-week period, they're not just proficient at martial arts, they're hopefully becoming more proficient at being really good human beings. And that was really the intention of our program.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, that's kind of just wrapping up. Black belt is not something you get, something you become,
There you
right?
go.
And
100%.
yeah,
100%.
very cool.
Yeah.
So tell me now, I know you're coaching martial arts schools,
Yeah.
right? And you do a lot of public speaking. I want to hear, when you're coaching martial arts schools, what are the most typical things you think martial arts school owners do wrong that you see over and over and over again, that like if they did those things correctly, everything would change for
Yeah.
them?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to first give it to you from a broad perspective. Most martial arts school owners, when they're asking for coaching, the first thing they'll say is, I need more students, right? And you've probably heard that as well. And there's
Yep.
nothing wrong with getting more students. However, what most of them do, even if you're teaching them how to get more students, they end up going through the front door as fast as they're going, or going through the back door as fast as they went through the front door. They don't have
Right.
this idea of retention. And that really comes from, or the importance of retention, and that comes from them not being adept at their systems. Okay. So that's one of the things that I work with a lot of school owners on. I'm a huge proponent of, the E-Myth, Michael Gerber, having a systems driven business, something I was teaching back in the day when I was teaching at the NATMA National World Conferences. That's what I was known for, because my 10 years prior to opening up my martial arts school back in 95, I spent 10 years with Procter & Gamble as a sales manager.
Hmm.
So when you have a multi-billion-dollar business, you don't get by without having quality systems. And
Right.
so that's one of the things that I think that people really don't understand, particularly when they're smaller operations. They're just going to do it when they think it's ready. And that works well when you're smaller. But as you begin to hit a critical mass, for me, it's right when I hit around 100 or 150 to 200 students. I realized I was constantly reacting to everything. And when I started to pull back and look at my business, working on my business, not just in my business, and setting up those systems, now those things started to run the school efficiently on its own. Then I could train people to do those systems efficiently. And now my role as the master instructor could be, of course, interacting with my students and parents and overseeing the overall strategy of the business, but then training my staff to not only do the systems, but when a system is in place and you're not reacting, you can now be more present with your students and their parents. And I
Mm.
think that totally lends to being able to retain students at a higher level. So that's a huge one for me. I also think that that schools really have to understand their unique selling proposition in an environment, right? In an area. Like when I opened up my school, I had 6 competitors in a 2-mile radius. This was in November of 95. So I wanted to be known as that person that was really developing not only strong martial artists, but having a very high degree of character development training. So when students were coming to me, I could go to their parents and I could say, these are the types of skills that we're teaching physically. And importantly, this is what we're teaching. Now, a lot of schools might say, well, yeah, we have that kind of stuff all the time, but it was an integral part of what we were doing. And it was then culminated with the black belt testing procedure that I just shared with you. So that's what I want to be known. Our tagline was building our community one black belt at a time. We wanted the community to experience our students. And even if they didn't know they were black belts, go, wow, there's something different about them. They're more respectful. They're more proactive. They've got a light in their eye. They like to take on challenges, like to help other people. And those were the qualities that we were teaching as part of our literal part of our program. They were requirements that we had.
The problem I have with that is obviously you need a USP. I think it's important, a unique selling proposition. But I think people, overestimate the the idea that they actually have one. Like they don't actually have one. They just say
Right,
like, yeah, we
right,
teach
right,
confidence, we teach
right.
respect, we teach focus. Like, dude, like everyone does that. That's not unique, right?
100%.
And I think more school owners, if you're listening to this, like write this down and maybe research it later. You should have some sort of gift wrap on your system that where you can like identify what your system is, and that's what makes it a unique selling proposition. For instance, let's say I might have a tough time thinking of an example in the moment, but like um what was that like the suds in like the washing machine where you put in and the scrubbing bubbles would like get the, we know what I'm talking about, it used to be in
Yep,
infomercials,
yep.
it would like
Mhm.
clean, what was that called, OxyClean,
Okay,
right?
OxyClean. Yep.
OxyClean, like they had a unique selling proposition, was like the scrubbing bubbles. I was like, you needed, I don't know what their word for it is. I'm sure if I Googled it, I could find it. But they had a specific term or word for that process. Now, a lot of other soaps probably had that, but that was the thing that they
Right.
used in order to, in their advertising. Like, well, I gotta have that, right? Like, so if you need want to find like a marketing term or a phrase that will, that like you have, even for things you already do anyway, it's just like the gift wrap on it,
Yeah,
right? It's the marketing for it.
yeah,
For instance, like for my coaching, right? Like how I help other martial arts school owners, I could say, hey, I can help you get more students through schools, daycares, or businesses. Okay, that's what I do. I don't do all organic, right? I don't do any Facebook ads or anything like that, all organically. But I, instead of just saying those things, I say it's called the Triangle Codex. The Triangle Codex is a 3-step strategy I use to help people get through blah blah blah. And people hear Triangle Codex, oh, that's something different that everyone else has,
yeah,
right? There's
yeah,
a gift wrap on that, right? And be completely transparent, right? But that's my unique selling proposition. So martial arts school owners need that same thing. What is the term for what you actually do that we can tell parents like, oh, this is what we do at at John's Karate,
yeah,
right? We have this one processor system for blah blah
yeah.
blah.
Well, I absolutely love that, Matthew. And the one thing that I would add to that, and maybe I didn't articulate it well enough, but it's one thing to have identified a unique selling proposition and have it gift wrapped, as you're saying. It's quite another thing to make sure it's an integral part of everything you do in your school.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to make sure that that speaks through not only your advertising and your branding and your marketing, but it's your curriculum that's impacted by it. It's the way your staff is trained and it's the languaging that they're using. So when someone comes, you're not just using it as this, fluffy thing that you're using to bring people in. It's an actual tangible part of what you're teaching. And
Mm-hmm.
it's I always say an integral part of your curriculum because you want to make sure you want to be able to look a parent in the eye, for instance, and say, this is what our deliverable is going to be. And then have them after months or years say, yes, you delivered on that. And it was far beyond being able to throw a great sidekick or a reverse punch.
Yeah, exactly. People will say, we're going to teach your kid focus and confidence, and then at the intro lesson, and never bring it up ever again.
That's,
Right?
that's what I'm talking about.
It's so
That's what I'm
frustrating.
talking
Yeah.
about. Yeah.
So what systems specifically do school owners you see typically that come to you? What do they mess up? Or what
Wow.
systems they
Well,
not have?
curriculum is a big piece for me. And so, for the Superfoot organization, I designed the curriculum as well. I designed the curriculum, of course, for our organization. And I think that a lot of them they'll not be scientific, if you will, about their curriculum. Number one, sometimes they won't even have one, or they have one and it's kind of rolling around in their head and it's what they were taught, decades ago. And then what they oftentimes will do is they look at curriculum as a almost like a funnel. So they'll have so much material at the beginning of a student's lifetime that they'll overwhelm their white belts, and by the time they get to black belt, they got nothing left to teach them. So they underwhelm their black belts, right? And so what I think is that curriculum should actually move in the opposite direction, where you're giving your students at the beginning very little curriculum, but focusing on basic skills that they can develop. I mean, how many times, Matthew, have we seen schools where advanced students are black belts and their basics are just really poor, but there's all this stuff that they have to memorize and they have to demonstrate. But what I like to do is at the beginning levels is keep the curriculum very, very small, but very focused on skills, and then it can be expanded from there. So I think that's a major piece that I see school owners not having a good handle on.
Yeah, I would say I'm guilty of that. Us as Action Karate as an organization, we looked at our curriculum maybe a couple, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, and we realized we picked up so many pieces over the years. So like this one and that one, and this seminar we went to that, and like we added so much that it became so top heavy,
That's right.
right? And then yeah, they remember 8 weapons katas, but then we asked them to do a sidekick, and it's totally the chamber's not correct, right?
That's right.
And
That's
we
right.
see it at black belt testing, right? And I'm being transparent now because hey, we're not perfect either,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So we did the same thing where it was like, okay, we peeled the onion back, we got rid of a lot of the stuff that we felt like wasn't actually that important, added it on later, and okay, we're gonna work jab for 2 months. Okay, cool, we're gonna work knee, right? And there's ways to people think, oh, they might get bored or it's not gonna be exciting for them. Well, first of all, it's exciting when you're good at it.
Yes.
Okay, when you suck
Yes.
at something, it's not exciting. So it does get exciting as long as you disguise repetition in a million different ways,
That's
which you
exactly what
obviously
I was
do.
just going to say. One of my mantras is repetition is the mother of skill, but variety is the spice of life. So
Yeah.
that's our responsibility as an instructor to be able to disguise that repetition. And I'm with you 100%. When you have a student that is well skilled and they're doing things proficiently, that's where a piece of that confidence also develops. I'm not saying that I've always been effective in doing this, but kind of have this vision of I would want to have any one of our black belt students be out there with a t-shirt and uniform pants on, no belt, performing just basics, and have them go, that person looks like they could be a black belt.
Mm.
Versus someone who knows all these forms and all these katas and all these things, and their basics are just not good, but yet they have all this stuff that they know. It doesn't sit well with me. I'd rather have the first example than the latter.
So how do you think you balance the idea of, okay, you got to learn the basics and drill it like crazy, but you also want it to be fun? Obviously, there's got to be some disguised
Oh yeah.
repetition, but also
Yeah.
if you're teaching kids or adults, but
Mm-hmm.
especially kids, it's got to be fun, right? You got to enjoy it. So how do you actually do
100%.
that?
100%. Well, I think also what many schools I find don't do, and when I'm working with them, it's one of the things that I take them through is being effective with class planning. As master instructors, we can probably step out on the mat, take a look at the students, and just teach a fantastic class. But when we are training staff members that maybe don't have as much experience, and we do this too, by the way, as master instructors, but they'll tend to gravitate toward the things that they feel comfortable teaching.
Hmm.
So if you have a curriculum where you have a number of requirements from one belt to the next, you may find if you're not planning your classes systematically, they're going to be very heavy in one area and very light on the other relative to what the instructor likes to teach.
Hmm.
And I've had this experience, and you probably have as well. You're up there, you're testing students, and you ask for something, and they have either no idea what you're talking about or they're really poor in executing those elements. And that is because that's when I started going to very specific class plans in our weekly staff meetings, as well as planning the drills that we were going to use in those classes the week prior. So they not only knew the curriculum that was going to be taught that week, but we would creatively talk about the drills that were going to be used to keep that momentum. And we literally had, I mean, I'm dating myself now because now everything is done virtually, but we literally had a binder this thick of drills and skills that we'd accumulated throughout the years. And we would go through it every week and we would pick the ones that were going to best be used for what we wanted to teach.
Very cool. I think honestly, even dating yourself that way, sometimes I think we need to like revert back a little bit to more
Well,
old
I have a
school
good friend of
techniques.
mine that what he's done is he does the class planning idea as well. And he does it on a 12-week testing cycle, just like I did. But he literally has many videos of all his drills and skills. And so an instructor can literally have their iPhone click on the class plan. He has a hyperlink to the video, and they can watch a 30-second, 1-minute video,
Great. Yeah.
which I think is fantastic. I love that idea. I mean, I would have
Yeah.
liked to have thought that if we would have the technology back when I owned my school, I would have been doing something similar, but we were doing with what we had.
That has me thinking maybe we should like for our instructors, maybe put like a QR code on like certain things of like how to do it. Like like how to clean the bathroom QR code. Okay, watch the
There you
video. Okay, now
go.
I know what to do.
There you go.
Right?
Well, one
How
of
to
the things that I had, when I was speaking a lot on systems is a systems manual, right? That was a
yeah.
big deal. There were not a lot of schools back in the mid to late 90s that had systems manuals, right? But I went through and I took everything that we did from the time someone called our school and came in from an intro lesson all the way to the time they left our school, and everything was itemized and systematized. So, and I think it's a brilliant idea. I mean, rather than have it in script, why not have a QR code? Oh my gosh, how do I do a retail order? They just click on that at the front desk. There it is there, and they can do it. I think that's a brilliant idea.
Yeah, one of the things that I think has been helpful for us is when we have an instructional video of how to do something, it has to be short.
Yes.
Okay. So if
Yes.
you're like, oh, I'm going to walk you from A to Z and it's going to be, here's how to enroll people and it's a 3 hour video,
Oh no.
people don't do it.
No.
But if you take that video and it's 3 hours, but it's in 5 minute segments, then people are way more likely to digest
100%.
it. You got to think like people are used to like TikToks or clips
Exactly.
like this,
Exactly.
right? So everything's got to be little tiny videos. Like, keep on going, keep on going, keep on going. Kind of like, it's just like class. You wouldn't be like, all right, do 500 kicks. You would say, okay, we're going to do sets of 10. Okay, now I can do them over here. Now I can do them over here. And you might end up with 500, but it's not the same. It's not
Totally.
digested the same
Well, the
way,
stat I
right?
heard, this was at a business conference I was speaking at several years ago, but I'm probably going to get the timing incorrect, but you'll see the relativity, is that the average attention span of a human being is like 7 seconds, and the
Yeah.
average attention span for a goldfish is 9 seconds, right?
Yep.
So we have to know that that's who our audience is, particularly when we're developing younger staff members. Now, it doesn't mean that they can't get to where we want them to get to eventually. And man, I've had some young people that ended up, developing to amazing instructors, but we do have to be able to meet them where they're at in terms of how we're communicating to them.
Yeah, I was actually talking about this with a client the other day. They said, like, have you noticed teenagers are like different now than they were previously? And one of the things that we've noticed, it feels like at least, is like teenagers are almost like 2 to 3 years behind developmentally in terms of maturity. And it's like, I'm not a social psychologist. I'm just looking around and I see it, if across our schools. So if an instructor is 18 and they show up late to things or they're not dressed appropriately or whatever, you got to think, okay, but developmentally they did school from home for 2 to 3 years, like they're really kind of like a 15-year-old,
That's
right?
and I've heard teachers actually say that. So when I've spoken, because one of the things I do in my speaking business is I speak at schools occasionally, and I've had teachers say that exact thing. It's almost as if they lost a year to 2 years in terms of maturity, particularly young boys, because they tend to mature
Mhm.
at a slower rate anyway. I was
Yeah.
just thinking of something. I did this like 20 years ago, but we had a local high school right down the road from us that would invite us to do demonstrations for their World Awareness Week each year. And I would go in and I would be, welcomed by a student. And so usually that was a very gregarious young person. They'd shake my hand, whatever. And then I'd start to meet other students, and these are high schoolers, and they didn't know how to shake my hand. They didn't know how to look me in the eye. And so we put a polite greeting in our white belt curriculum. You
Mm.
couldn't get to yellow belt until you knew how to shake someone's hand, introduce yourself, make eye contact, and say your name. Because I just saw those skills just deteriorating among young people, particularly in high school.
Yeah, that's also just built into the curriculum.
Yeah,
We don't have it built into the curriculum. We
that's
will
right.
teach like there's three ways to have a good handshake: it's eye contact, firm, and web to web, like the web of your
Okay,
hand, the
good.
web of
Love
the
that.
other person's hand.
Yeah,
And we'll say, okay, what are the three ways to have a good handshake? And then they'll do it, right?
yeah.
So and by the way, if you're listening to this right now, steal this is awesome, and parents go nuts for it. So we'll teach the handshake, okay, and we'll talk about those three things. We'll have a student come up, they'll demonstrate, and we'll have everyone go like this. Everyone say web. They go put it on the other side. Say web. Cool. Then firm. And then eye contact. And then we'll have them shake the instructor's hand. And like after they do whatever kick or something, they'll shake a hand, right? And then maybe have some like Purell nearby, right? So you don't get sick. And then after that, what we'll do is we'll have them go shake their parents' hand and say, "Hi, my name is.
Mhm.
Nice to meet you." And we'll say, "Hey, parents, if your child doesn't do those three things, eye
Mm,
contact for web to web, please correct them. Don't let them run away."
yeah.
Okay. And then the next level, which is like, this is like what's really, really good, is we'll have them, okay, we'll say, "Hey, parents, it's pretty easy for them to come shake your hand. They're very comfortable with you. They know you. The hard part is shaking someone else's hand they never met before. And we're all here as a community. We're all here to get better. And it takes more than just a person, it's a village. So we're going to have all the kids go and shake a different parent's hand they don't know in this building, in the room.
Yeah.
And parents, I want your permission right now that it's okay that if your child does something wrong with someone else, it's okay for another parent to correct your child. Is that
Mhm.
okay? I want to make everyone like kind of like
Yeah.
opt into that.
Yeah.
And then they'll go around and shake other parents. And then, they'll shake other parents' hands, which is awesome. Everyone's smiling, laughing,
Love
it's a
it.
good time.
I love it.
And and then after that, what's cool is now here's like the kind of bonus part of that is now the parents are connected with another kid there besides their own kid.
Uh,
And now the parents will talk, "Oh, how old's your kid son? Oh, my son's blah, blah, blah."
mm,
And it kind of facilitates that instead of them just talking on the phone. So
love
if
that.
you don't
Love
do
that
that,
idea.
steal it. It's awesome.
Right on.
Yeah.
We did. You're making me think of something that we did that was in that same line. We used to do a 2 introductory lesson before enrollment process, and so one of the things that they had an assignment for was to do a polite greeting with 3 individuals. Of course,
Mm,
their mom or dad can be there with them, but that was literally an assignment that we had from the first intro lesson to the second intro lesson, and then they had to demonstrate it before they earned their white belt. So but I
mm,
love yours because I think I say this many times to the school owners that I coach is that people come to a martial arts studio, they come to a school for many reasons: confidence building, focus, concentration, bullying, proofing, getting in shape, etc. They come for those reasons, but they stay because of the community.
mm,
So anything we can do as school owners is to build our community so that again, those parents aren't just sitting on the bench, scrolling through their phone, but they're interacting. And I remember I knew we kind of hit this level. This is years ago where I had a young student who I think he had just gotten his junior second degree black belt with me. So he had been with me for 5 or 6 years. He was ready to move on. And mom came in to give me the news that Michael wasn't going to train with us anymore. And I, of course, wanted him to stay, but I said, you know what? It's been such a great experience. And thanks so much for bringing Michael here. And she started crying. And I said, what's wrong? She goes, "I'm going to miss this place. I have so many friends here, right?" And I said, "Well, Stephanie, you can still come and, hang out with us, whatever, come to a kickboxing class." But what it said to me is that is why one of the reasons they had stayed, and that she as a parent had developed those relationships as well, because we all know that students are going to want to quit at some point in time. I mean, there are so many activities right now. I used to say my competition wasn't my 6 schools in a 2-mile radius that were my competitors. It was dance, and it was soccer, and it was baseball. So what we want to do is we want to create an environment, first of all, of value, right, of value. So the parents are seeing the value in our program beyond kicking and punching or grappling, and they also have that community. So when that student wants to quit, another great example that I had is when a parent would say, Jimmy wants to quit. I need you to talk to him because he needs to be here. He
Hmm.
needs to be here and hear what you're teaching. So would you please talk to him and convince him? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Versus, oh my gosh, it's so hard getting him here. I'm just tired of fighting with him. I'm going to pull him out of the program. Now, not to say I'd never had that happen either. All I'm saying is we got better at being able to identify that and being able to, get into that process earlier to save students more times than not.
Yeah, and that all comes from that connection you have with that
100%.
person, right? We get so I think people get lazy, especially business owners
Yeah.
who, have so much on their plate. Maybe not laziness, maybe they're just overwhelmed. But let's just say lazy, because sometimes it straight up is, where we rely so much on automations and AI and everything to do things for us that like we don't actually just call someone and say like, "Hey, how's Johnny doing?" Or don't
That's
sit
right.
down and talk to that parent. And then when they come to you to quit, you sound defensive because you're trying to save them, as opposed to like, oh, I have a real connection with you, and like I'm trying to actually help you. And if you don't have that connection, and I think now even more in the digital age, like these human personal connections are becoming even more valuable,
Right.
not less valuable,
That's right.
right?
That's
Now, like, you want customer service. How much do you appreciate when you need to call a company and it's not 20 minutes talking to a chatbot trying to get an agent. I know
right.
when I call Amex, they're great about it. American Express, it's like I call them. There's like one or two automation things. Okay, you write on with someone, and then like maybe it's Chase. I don't know, one of them, and then someone answers, "Hi, Matthew. How you doing today, sir?" And I'm like, "Oh my god, like that's like
It's a human
amazing,
being.
right?"
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
and I didn't have to like play the game of
Well,
like agent, representative. So you got to have that connection with
oh
the
my
person. That
God. And
stuff's never gonna go
we
away.
we went through that as our school grew. And I'm not saying we ever were perfect at it, but I realized one time it's like, wow, we were spending a lot of time with students and their parents when we wanted them to enroll. And then we were usually doing an upgrade to a black belt training program at around month 3 to 4, right? So we were spending a lot of time then. And then the next time we were going to see them is when we were getting them ready for black belt preparation, if in fact they even stayed that long. And I thought, wow, this is backwards. So this is not healthy, right? I mean, we're wanting to see them when we want to charge them money and we want to upgrade them, but we're not doing that in between. So we started developing more systems around that, even doing like little process checks with the instructors. One of the things I had my staff do is make sure that you're not only connecting with every student, but they were actually going over and talking to parents in between classes as well. So they had that relationship, because it's very easy when you're just focusing on the business aspect of things, is having those connective conversations when you want to enroll someone in something and then go, okay, that one's done. I got to get to the next one. And we lose touch with our students
Yeah.
and parents.
And I think it's good for the staff that they can have conversations that are not money related,
That's right.
right?
That's
Like
right.
you don't always want to come to someone with it's money related because they're joining or because they're quitting. Like you want to be able to have other conversations. So one of the things that we'll look at is I don't know where I got this from. I got this from another coach or something, but um, that like physically we know we want the instructors to go talk to the parents, but how do you actually like see if that's happening besides seeing them talk?
Yeah.
It's like feet off the mat. So
Mm.
like what we'll do is we'll watch class and we'll have a recording of it and we'll watch it and say, okay, after class, there can't be any feet on that mat. All the feet, like we're actually looking at their feet.
Oh, I
Got
love
to be
that.
on in the parent area.
I
And
love
if
that.
feet aren't in the parent area, it doesn't mean you're going to talk to every single person that walks by, but at least like gives you the opportunity. If
Right.
you're even 3 feet back and the parent area is over there and you're over
Yeah.
here, there's a barrier,
Right.
right? There's no wall or anything, but there's an invisible barrier. You got to be feet off the mat and until the rest class is ready to start, maybe a couple minutes before to warm some people up or
Sure.
whatever. But like, there's no feet on that mat.
Oh, I
All the
love
feet
that.
are off.
And
Yeah.
that's simple, and people remember that. One of the systems that we put in place was that we developed a pretty strong leadership team program. So we had students that could do the warm-ups at the beginning, and so that was the designated time for all of my lead instructors to be feet off the mat, to use your
Mm.
vernacular. So knowing
Perfect.
that
Yeah.
someone was warned, that was just part of their process. They didn't need to be in front for those 5 minutes, 7 minutes. They could be in front or in back interacting with the parents. So, but I love that feet off the mat because it's like they always say, if you're going to develop habits, um, James Clear, who wrote Atomic Habits, talks about the idea of stacking habits. So,
Hmm.
for instance, I'm going to use an example in the coaching world. If you're going to do positive affirmations, do your positive affirmations in your mind when you're brushing your teeth every morning, because every morning you're going to brush your teeth. So just stack it on top of something. So, in a martial art class, you're almost always going to do some sort of a warm up. Well, what about when the warm up, you have your leadership team person or persons leading that, and that's the time that you're interacting and touching base with parents.
Perfect. Yeah, exactly. I want to ask a little bit about your speaking career.
Yeah,
Is that cool?
sure.
So at some point you went from martial arts instructor, school owner. At what point did you go, okay, I'm going to go to speaking now?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, it's interesting. So, give you a little of my background. I started martial art training back in 73 as a 10-year-old. So, I've been basically teaching martial arts my entire life. And so, by the time I was 13, I was assisting in classes. Now, this is back pre Karate Kid days, right? So, it
Hmm.
was mostly adults that were in the classes. So, speaking in front of a group was always very natural for me. And so I feel very blessed about that. And when I opened up my school back in 95 here in Aurora, Colorado, I think I already mentioned I had 6 competitors in a 2 mile radius. So I started thinking to myself, well, how am I going to distinguish myself between these other schools? Do I have a bigger yellow page ad or do I have this bed ad? And I said, no, what I want to do is I want to go in and talk to the schools, talk to students directly in the schools. So I
Hmm.
developed this program called Kindness Counts because I had a lot of schools that were reaching out to me to do bully proofing programs, and which I think are incredibly important. But I thought, from my own training and my own experience, whatever you focus on expands. So if I'm focusing on bullying or anti-bullying, even, I'm still focusing on bullying. But what if I focus on the antithesis of that? That could be a positive. What if I focused on kindness? So I would go in and I would speak to kids. They would give me like an entire school, right? I'd have 600 elementary school students. I'd have all the first graders, then all the second graders, and they'd give them to me for like 30, 40 minutes. And I would do this program that didn't teach any kicking or punching, but it had basic martial arts skills and etiquette to it. And at the very end, what we did is I challenged every one of the schools or every one of the students to do 10 random acts of kindness in the next week, with my thought process being if I saw 600 kids and every one of them did it, it would be an injection of 6,000 random acts of kindness into a school community. So
Hmm.
that started really developing. I was getting my name out. And so I was having schools call me to come in and do the program. So, anyway, I often say that if you can speak to a bunch of second graders and keep their attention, adults are no problem. So it basically kind of grew from that. And so then I started going to service organizations here in the Denver area. Um, was doing, there was one time I had 20 of those talks in a 2 week period. So I was basically crafting my skill of being a speaker to the adult arena. And it just kind of developed from there. And then from that point, from not only just just speaking and keynote addresses, then I was also asked on a limb or on a whim to do a board breaking experience for a business coaching group here in Denver. And I said, I can put that together. And so I did. And I literally actually brought my black belts there to hold the boards and had people write their limiting beliefs on one side, and the other side was the breakthrough they wanted to have. And it went really well. Had about 50 or 60 in that group. And at the end, I had all these people come up to me and go, so is that what you do now? You go around nationally doing this board breaking thing? And I'm like, yeah, that's a good idea. So now I get to next month in September, I'll be in Greenville, South Carolina, doing about 250 um, fitness center owners and taking them through the process. So it's just kind of evolved from that. And for me, it was an extension of being a martial arts instructor. When I realized that my ability to speak and how I was delivering was very much akin to how I was teaching martial arts, and I was being authentic, then things started to really take off for me.
So is that nerve wracking at all? Because when you're running a martial arts school, you kind of have like built-in recurring revenue with students all the time. Speaking is based on the gig. Now, obviously, a speaking gig
Right.
hire is way more money than a
Yep.
tuition for one martial arts
Right.
student. But was part of you nervous? That like, oh
I'll
my
tell you
god, I'm
what,
not
and
gonna.
still is, and still is.
Yeah.
It's one of those things coming into this business, and I'm still dealing with it. And probably the revenue that I create is about cutting, is divided in thirds by my coaching that I do, the martial arts organization that I'm still involved with, and then my speaking. But yeah, it is. It's not a recurring revenue model, to be clear. And I'm in a martial arts environment. I'm a master instructor. Everyone's bowing, calling me sir, shaking my hand, etc. And all of a sudden you're a speaker, you're a white belt again, learning that business. So, I mean, there are certainly degrees that I brought in from my martial arts experience into the speaking realm, not only from a business standpoint, but it's a lot of the things that I talk about. I use that as my main metaphor. But yeah, it can be nerve-wracking, to be clear. I'm not gonna lie. But it's like anything. And what I wanted to do, basically my principle is I wanted to go out of the dojang, Korean term dojo, Japanese. I wanted to get out of the dojang and into the world, because I knew the basic ideas that I was speaking about that helped so many of my students throughout the years could work well in a corporate environment, because I came from that for 10 years. I knew it had an overlay. I knew I was great in terms of talking with entrepreneurs, because I was one myself, because I think being an entrepreneur is the number one personal development program out there, right?
Mhm.
There's nowhere to hide. And I
I like
also
that.
love connecting with kids. So high schoolers are really my sweet spot. I love connecting with those groups.
Very cool. So, when you go into these talks, are you getting it set up through like a manager, a booking agent? You do it yourself? Like,
Usually
how do you actually?
myself, and it comes a lot from word of mouth. The more I speak, the more I speak, right?
Mm,
And I also you've obviously watched, I have a weekly blog that I've been doing for now 3 to 4 years, my Mind of a Champion tip of the week. So a blog goes out every week, literally every week. I think I've missed 3 times in the last 4 years when my computer crashed. Um, and I'll be doing an event here in a week from tomorrow. We're doing a men's summit here in Denver, because there's a lot of guys hurting out there. So I'm taking the message and correlating it to that. So again, the more I speak, the more I speak, right? Because then I'm having people, we'll call it a stage side lead. So they'll come up, hey, wow, I love that message. Could you come and speak to my group? So it can be like this, absolutely.
yeah.
But it's really the way that I view it is I'm going to get my message out there in whatever way. I'm either going to do it in front of a live audience. I'm going to do it through my weekly Facebook lives, or what I'm putting on LinkedIn, et cetera, through my coaching. If I feel that I have a strong intention, a positive intention, I just keep sharing, it's going to roll out well for me.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And it's been something I've been thinking about toying in because I think I'll enjoy it more than anything.
Mm-hmm.
I've done a couple like corporate events. I did one for like a veterinary hospital.
Okay.
I've done some for some universities,
Yeah.
but I haven't done it. It's been like one this year, two next
Right.
year. It wasn't something I've like put energy
Sure.
into.
Sure.
But I think it'd be super fun. I think I would enjoy it.
Well, the one thing
Um,
too that I learned, and I had a coach challenge me on this as well. I'm almost embarrassed to say this now. When I was first coaching and speaking, I was thinking, well, this martial art thing, I don't know if that's where I want to have it be my identity, right? And I shared it with a very prominent coach in the coaching world. We were at a mastermind, and it was my turn to ask the question. And I said, hey, Steve, I think I'm going to kind of move away from this martial art thing. And I don't think, that's the way that I want to present myself. And I could literally see him like getting almost agitated in his chair. And he metaphorically like grabbed me by the collar and said, what are you talking about? That's your unique selling proposition.
yeah, hundred
You know what I'm
percent.
saying? And then I found out later on, he literally had a poster of Bruce Lee in his office. He loved martial arts, right? But it kind of all crystallized when I was with one of my coaches that was coaching me, and said, Chris, you need to understand that the things that you think are ordinary, other people think are extraordinary, right? The discipline that you've created in the last 4 or 5 decades, the way that you live your life, the way that you have a positive mindset, all those things that you derive from the martial art lifestyle, you think they're ordinary now because you do them every day. But there's a lot of people out there that would pay, to have that kind of a gift to be able to learn those things and introduce them in their own lives.
Yeah, it's a very cool niche. Like most people, they just go up there, they speak, and they're just kind of like a carbon copy of, what their version of Tony Robbins and Zig Ziglar or whatever, and then that's it, right?
Well,
For
and
us,
I'll
we have
tell you
this
what,
totally.
I have found, and this is my own perception, but I think it's true, is that I I have an introduction that I have created. So when people introduce to me, it's always the same thing and it sets up my talk. And I watch an audience like just make a shift where I gain instant credibility as soon as they say something like, and for the last 5 decades, he's been a student and teacher of the martial arts, achieving the rank of 8th degree black belt, master instructor. And in 1999, he was the national Taekwondo champion. And I literally hear the audience go, ooh. And so instantly, right? Instantly, I have
Very cool.
credibility. But again,
Yeah.
that to me, I'm proud of it. But after a while, it's just like ordinary. But you
Mm.
have to make sure that you show that to people because they'll see it as extraordinary.
I'm gonna write my intro. It's gonna be like fourth place at local tournament, did all right, never national champion, but he wasn't horrible.
That's right. There you
Uh,
go.
okay, I have a couple rapid fire questions.
Sure.
So I want to ask you as we wrap this up. Um, okay, so just to find out a little bit more about you, first one is, what do you feel like? Well, some will be personal, some will be business related. Okay. First one is, what's the biggest thorn in your side? Like, what bothers
Biggest,
you the most?
what bothers me the most.
Yeah.
What bothers me the most is people who have a resigned attitude. They've grown that resigned attitude. So sometimes when I'm coaching, that's one of the things we work on is mindset and skill set when I put that together. And is when people don't show up and they're not enthusiastic about what they're doing. That
Mm.
is a real thorn in my side because I tend to be naturally, I think, geared toward that. But I'm like, if you're going to do something, you might as well love it or like it, right? Let's go for it. And so I was just on the phone with someone this morning, a good friend of mine in the men's world. And the last several times I've spoken to him, I call it the Eeyore effect. Like remember Eeyore? That was the
Yep.
donkey in Winnie the Pooh. Yeah, it's going okay. I think life's okay. And I'm like, dude, let's have some enthusiasm. So that's a thorn in my side.
That's when you want to grab him by the collar.
No doubt, man. No doubt.
Yeah. Yeah. It could be such an energy suck. And I know, like, when I was talking to a martial arts school owner who was telling me, like, they're not really interested anymore and thinking about selling, but they also wanted to, like, build their staff and get new students. I was like, dude, if you're thinking those things,
Yeah.
like, I felt those things before,
Sure.
because I know.
Yeah.
And I just sold, like, my main location recently,
Right.
but that was most of my bandwidth. I was like, it's never going to be great because that energy transfers.
That's
Never.
right.
So
Right.
you got to either move on or go all in.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
doesn't
Well,
work.
it's like I had a coach tell me one time is 100% is easy, 99% is a bitch. Excuse my language, right?
That's a great one.
So
You cursed. Okay,
yeah,
good.
yeah. So there's my one for you, right? But
Yeah.
if you think about that, if we have just a little bit of wobble in our intentionality, it's never going to be good. And it's like, it's better. You see people that are 100% in, but they don't have good systems. They don't have, but they're being successful. Where others are vacillating and they have all the skill set to do it, but they're not successful just because of what's going on inside of them.
Love that. So what was the first part? 100%?
100% is easy. 99% is a
99% is
bitch.
bitch.
Yeah.
Cool. I love that. I'm going to take that. All right, next one. What is something people don't know about you?
Let's see. Well, I grew up in Wisconsin, even though I been here in Denver for 30 years. And I grew up in a little town in the Midwest, southeastern Wisconsin, called Oconomowoc, 30 miles west of Milwaukee. And it is the only city in the nation with 5 O's in its name. Oconomowoc. So that's one thing
Wow.
people don't know about me.
Wow. Fun fact. What does work-life balance mean to you?
Well, I'm going to explain it this way. I don't think that we ever get balanced. I was in a National Speakers Association meeting here in Denver several years ago, and there was a speaker who was a former busker on the streets at the wharf in San Francisco. and he was doing his thing. He was juggling, he was doing, and he was a very, very good speaker. And he looked over at the lectern, and it was a plexiglass podium. And he goes, I've been thinking about this all morning. And he walked over to it, and he put his hands on it, and he was wobbly. It was plexiglass. And the next thing we knew, he popped into a handstand. And in a handstand, he continued to talk to us. And he said to us, he said, most of us in life are always looking for work-life balance. We always want to get balanced. He said, I have to tell you, look at my hands right now. You think I'm balanced, but if you see them, they're making these micro movements all the while I'm standing here. He goes, I'm not balanced, I'm balancing. And he said to us, he said, you have to realize you're never going to be balanced, but you're always going to be striving for balancing. And you're always going to have, sometimes you're spending more time on one thing and then you move back to the other. And if you can accept that, then life's going to be a lot easier. And then he got off the podium and I sat there with my mouth agape, right? So the point in being is there's going to be times when I'm going to be imbalanced because I'm working on a specific project or I'm doing whatever I'm doing. But I always want to be focused on coming back to equilibrium, but not get myself all wound up in an axle because I'm not balanced. Give ourselves a break, but always be committed to balancing versus being balanced.
I love that. That was great. Great story too. All right. What's your most treasured childhood memory?
Well, I've got several, but I'm going to give you one that I speak about. I almost start every keynote talk with this. Okay, it's martial art related. I started martial art training in '73. It was because of the Kung Fu TV show, right? And at that time, our kids were not in martial arts schools. I went to a little small community center. I was the only kid there, and but I saw these guys kicking and punching, and I'm like, oh my God, this is home. And about 3 years after that, I would meet a man that would literally change my life. And he's still my instructor to this day, named Grandmaster J.K. Lee. Grandmaster Lee is in Milwaukee, Wisconsin area. His birthday was just on Monday. I think he's now 80 years old. He's semi-retired. But anyway, he had recently moved from Korea, could hardly speak English, very little money in his pocket, but he had this burning desire to transform lives through martial arts. And so I'm sitting in the corner of the room. I had already been training for 3 years at this point. I'm 13 years old. I'm sitting in the corner of the room. My legs were spread wide. I'm stretching out. And he walks on the mat and he starts surveying all of the students. And pretty soon I realize he's staring directly at me. So before I could move a muscle, he came down and he sat down in front of me and he put his right foot on the inside of one leg, his left foot on the inside of the other. He grabbed the ends of my belt and with one push-pull, split me out to 180 degrees, right? So I usually say, I learned 2 life lessons that morning. Number 1 is anyone can do the splits once. And the second thing is when he looked me in the eyes and he said to me in his broken English, he said, I will make you a champion. I will make you a champion. Now, when I was 13, I was thinking of medals and trophies and Olympics and all that kind of stuff. But as I've grown older, I realized that he was teaching me something much more powerful. It was about being a champion in life, right? And particularly for me at that time, I was growing up in a household with an amazing mom and a dad who was addicted to alcohol. And it totally had a grip on our entire family dynamic. So I didn't really have that male role model, but now I had someone who I revered saying to me, I'm going to make you a champion. And my head heard, I'm going to make you a champion. But what my heart heard was, I believe in you. And that was an absolute turning point in my life. I can literally take that all the way back to how I started moving in this direction and things started opening up for me. And I just am so grateful for that experience. And I'm also have always remembered that experience when I was interacting with students, knowing whatever I say, he probably forgot about it as soon as he said it, right? But for me, it stayed with me for a lifetime. And so as we're speaking to our students in our schools, realize the impact that we can have. So that'd be one of my favorite childhood memories.
I love that. Next week, I'm going to tell all the instructors, knock everyone to a split. I feel like you can't get away with that these days. If you just did
That's
that.
right. Yeah. You got to remember, this was 1976. So
yeah, different time. All right. What's a tool that you've used in your business that you think everyone needs to know about?
A tool that I use in my business that everyone needs to know about. Let me think here. Well, this is an easy one, and it's a practical one, but I'm all into systems. And so one of the things I utilize and I manage my actually, I'll give you two examples of it. I manage everything through Outlook. So everything in my business has folders, it has calendars, it has my objectives, et cetera, et cetera. And then another tool that I use, which may not be as applicable to martial arts school owners, but it is to authors and speakers, is I have a program called Kajabi, because I have two online programs that I sell, and I have my website on that. My CRM is integrated with that. And so everything is in one place. And so those two programs I use literally every day to manage my business. And
Cool.
and if I still had a school, I'm not going to make a plug for any software programs out there. But all the things I was doing manually back in the 90s and the early 2000s, all of those are done in spades in a software program. So if you don't have a really solid software program that you're utilizing to its capacity, a lot of people do it and they use 3% of it. But
Yeah.
I'd say for school owners, make sure you've got one that you could be intimately integrated into your school.
Yeah. And some martial arts CRMs have video course capability and
Yeah.
but but also like I use Kajabi too, and I'll have my website on there, and I'll have
Yeah.
lead magnets, and
Yeah.
blah
Yeah.
blah blah,
That's
and the
exactly what I
course.
do.
It's just easy.
Yeah.
Um, all right, but if you're a school owner and you don't like that stuff, like you don't like dealing with it, get someone else to do it
There you go. Can
because
I
yeah,
just speak to that for a minute?
yeah.
When my school, I got stuck at 200 students. I got to 200 students very quickly within the first year of being in
Mhm.
business.
And then 500 in 3 years.
And then
I already know.
500 years after that, right?
Yeah.
But the turning point was for me to finally say, I got to let go of these things with my Kung Fu grip. And I have to start training some people because I was sitting at 200 for quite a while and I was killing myself. So a lot of people are adverse to training, paying staff, et cetera. And I'm not saying you come out of the gates and hire 5 people, but develop those people and start believing in them because you are going to get to a place, unless that's where you want to be. If you want to be a one man or one woman show, then God bless you. But if you want to grow and still have some hair at the end of a couple of years, make sure you're training people and you're expanding, what needs to be done in the school.
Hmm. And if anyone knows about keeping their hair, you have an amazing head of hair. You have like A1 champion head of hair. All right. What job would you not do even if you made $1 million a month?
Ooh, man, that's a good question. This is going to be a generalized statement, but it would be selling something that I didn't believe in. That would be hellish for me. So if there was something where I just didn't feel like, for instance, if I was working for a tobacco company, that wouldn't resonate with me. And that would be hellish because, you got the money on the one side and whatever and the comfort, but it's not aligned with me. That would be awful for me to do.
Hmm. Good one. All right. Last one. What's one book you recommend for business owners? Your favorite book?
I kind of mentioned it before, and every time I bring on a new coaching client, I highly recommend that they read it. And it's an old one, but the E-Myth is amazing.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
E-Myth is one I not only spoke at martial arts conferences with that as my basis, but I did in other realms afterwards. And because I lived it, it's just what I was talking about. I had created a job for myself. And like Gerber says, you wake up one day and you realize you're working for a lunatic, right? And it's you. So I
Yeah.
always say to people, get that book read because we come into the martial arts as instructors and business owners because we love it. We love teaching. And I always tell the clients that I work with I think it's a Venn diagram. There's 3 specific, it's like the hedgehog effect, right? If you've ever read Good to Great. There is being a proficient martial artist. There is being a proficient teacher. And then there's being a proficient business person. And those 3 circles intersect in that one area. And if all of those are equally able to intersect, you're going to have a successful business. But if you love to do martial arts and you love to teach, but you're bad at business, you're not going to thrive. If you love to do martial arts, you don't like to teach, but you think you can make up for it just in being good at business, it's not going to work over in the long haul. So either develop those skills yourself, or what the book Strength Finders would say is find out the things you're really good at, develop those, hire someone to do the things you're not that good at.
Yep, exactly. Well, if someone wants to get help from you or they want to find you, how do they reach you?
Yeah, thanks for asking. Easiest way is just go directly to my website. It's www.chrisnatzke, my name, and CHRIS, N as in Navy, AT, Z as in zebra, KE.com. They can reach me directly through that. They can also see me on LinkedIn, on Facebook, etc. But go to my website, and when you go there, you're going to see all the programs that I have in terms of speaking and coaching, et cetera, et cetera.
Cool. And thank you for listening. My name is Matthew Brenner. If you want to grow your school organically through the Triangle Codex, which is recruiting students through schools, daycares, and businesses, reach out to me, Matthew, at wdojo.com. You can visit the website or find me on Instagram at blackbeltbrenner1. Bye, guys.